catch us where we are. But we're definitely going to be using the chat feature today, which I'm sure everybody by this point is familiar with how to use Zoom or Teams chat, since I know most of us, if not all of us, have been in a virtual environment for some time now. So while we wait, I will kick it off with a few, icebreaker questions so we can just get to know each other a little better. Some of my board members are monitoring the chat, so we'll be looking at that. So my name's Alex Blakely. I am the co-chair of Tag Young Professionals Society. So hello, everyone. I have a question. If you could retire right now, would you choose a beachfront or would you choose a mountain escape? So you're going to the beach, you living on the beach, or you're going to get you a cabin in the mountains? That's a hard one. I know. I think I'd go to the beach. And I can't see the chat, so if someone's saying something, call it out for me, one of my board members.
Pretty close.
It is pretty close so far. I like Ben's response. Beach at the base of the mountains.
Hey, that's always, that is always an option. That's always an option. All right, so we can hop in and get started. It's 4:34. And hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so glad to have you. My name's Alex Blakely. I'm a marketing manager at Comcast Business. A little fun fact about me. I am a Tennessee Vol. My husband is a Georgia Bulldog. So after last week's upset, you can imagine how it kind of went in my house, right? You can imagine. I've been at Comcast for 10 years, and I'm happy to introduce them as our sponsor for today's events. So a little bit about Comcast Business. I'm so proud to work at a company like Comcast because we are committed to providing our customers with the most reliable phone, internet, and TV services that consistently exceed expectations. We are responsible for powering the businesses that power the community, a responsibility that we definitely don't take lightly. Recently, we were honored at the 19th Annual American Business Awards, a virtual awards ceremony where we received 8 awards in total for our innovation and solutions. And in addition to winning Most Innovative Company of the Year, we are committed to supporting small businesses who've been hit the hardest by the pandemic. Through our RISE initiative, we have been able to award over $5 million in grants to over 500 businesses across select areas. So thank you, Comcast Business, for your amazing partnership and investing into Tag Young Professionals. So a brief overview of our agenda. We're going to start off with some board introductions. We're going to run into our presentations. We have a contest that is at the end of the presentations where you have the opportunity to win a Yeti tumbler or a North Face backpack. We've got some nice prizes up for grabs. And then we'll do a little bit of networking at the end. But before we dive into our content, again, feel free if you have questions while we're presenting to drop them in the chat. There will also be an opportunity at the end of each segment where we'll open it up and ask if you have any questions, and feel free to come on camera and participate with us. All right, we are going to hop into our panelists and board introductions. So we will start off with Ben Huiard.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Huiard, and I'm a marketing manager at Sage, as well as a board member here on the Young Professional Society. I've been with Sage for about 2.5 years full-time, with 2 consecutive summer internships prior to that. A fun fact about me, before working in the technology space, I tried my hand at commercial fishing for a few summers in Alaska.
Wow, Ben, Alaska, you can teach me a couple of things. Hey, how was that?
It was great. It was hard work, but it was a lot of fun and I enjoyed it. So sometimes when I'm in the office, I wish I was still out there at sea, but I know if I was still out there at sea, I'd wish I was in the office. So catch 22.
That's a very unique experience. Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing.
of course.
Awesome. So next up, we have Grayson Miller.
Hey guys, happy to be here. My name's Grayson. I'm a private wealth advisor at Goldman Sachs here in Atlanta. I've been there about 2.5 years, and I've been in the industry for almost 7 years. I work with founders of fast-growing companies across the Southeast with a huge focus in the tech scene here in Atlanta. My primary responsibility is managing personal capital, but I also connect business owners to the broader resources and network of Goldman. And I love connecting with people, so I'm excited to chat with you guys today. And as far as a fun fact, I hadn't really prepared one, but I'm going to table off of Ben's and say that I have family in Alaska and I love the mountains. I love snow skiing, and it is on my bucket list to go heli skiing in Alaska.
I like it. We have so many things in common. We just don't find those things out until we start sharing. So that's awesome, Grayson. Thank you. So up next, we have Caitlin Redenhagen.
Hey everyone, my name is Caitlin and I have been with Synovus for about 2.5 years as an information security analyst too. I lead 3 different security focused initiatives and am the vice president of our women in tech community. I am also part of the Tag Young Professional and Information Security boards, the former of which I'm here representing. I guess I'm a lot more boring than my other board members, but my fun fact is I have 3 dogs that I take care of on my own. And yes, it is as much work as it sounds like.
Caitlin, I have a 5-month-old golden doodle, so I could not imagine having 3 because 1, I'm about to pull all my hair out. So thank you for sharing. Up next, and last but not least, we have Ryan.
Hey everybody, my name's Ryan Umstead. I'm a senior engineer 2 and a team lead at BlackRock. Been at BlackRock for over 6 years now. And I think I might be competing for the most boring fun fact, but I grew up in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So like the chocolate bar, and it would literally smell like chocolate outside of while we were going to school and stuff on a weekly basis.
Ryan, I will say there are worse things to smell like than chocolate. So that's not a bad thing. That actually sounds kind of cool. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you, panelists, for your introductions. So again, during the presentations, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. We will have someone monitoring that. At the end of each segment, we'll open it up. You can ask questions. Please feel free. This is a pretty candid group, so there's no such thing as a bad question. So feel free to ask whatever comes to your mind. So we can dive into the content. Ben Huyard is going to kick us off with some tips of the importance of discussing your career goals with your leader.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys about discussing career goals with your leader. And that includes developing strong and transparent communication, defining your career goals and ambitions, and finally making your move. As I look towards career growth, I consider my zones of working. When I started in my role, I was positioned in my stretch zone, feeling challenged, excited, but with manageable fear. As I executed successfully against my responsibilities, I entered my comfort zone. And after a while in my comfort zone, I entered the stagnation zone, feeling restless and a bit dissatisfied. So I set up time with my leader to collaborate to identify and pursue opportunities within my role where I can position myself in my stretch zone. It's important to set up dedicated time apart from one-on-ones and year-end reviews to discuss and explore your career goals and ambitions. And in the early stages, I find it easier to frame this as a casual and ongoing conversation about your growth within the company and professional development as a whole. So I can become easily anxious and lose track of what I want to cover. So I find it helpful to set a clear meeting agenda to keep myself on track. I set up time with my manager to come up with a plan to make moves and develop in my current role, to touch on promotion and pay rise, but focus on emotional satisfaction in my work. And I indicated I need their support with concrete structure to guide my next steps. It's okay to start this conversation, even if you haven't fully identified or defined your career goals. In fact, I think this conversation is a great starting place. You can leverage your leader's expertise and experience to help you develop your own ideas. My leader instructed me to set long-term goals, immediate objectives, and corresponding actions. So to help me get started, I took a LinkedIn learning course on the pivot methodology, which is helping me reflect and look forward. As I identify and develop my career goals, I look to pivot within or outside of my current role. The pivot methodology provides 4 steps: plant, scan, pilot, and launch. In the plant stage, we identify what we want moving forward, and we can uncover this by looking at our existing strengths, interests, and experiences. Our current role and past experience is our foundation, and it's helpful to reflect on when building our goals for the future. So consider your strengths, interests, and values. What are you best at? What activities do you enjoy? When are you most in the zone? What's most important to you? I work best when I have clear objectives and strong mechanisms to measure my success. It's important for me to see the impact and value of my effort. I also like to experiment with new ways of doing things and find what works best. It can also be helpful to set a vision for the future, but for me, looking 5 or 10 years down the road is too intangible and frankly, a bit overwhelming. So I'm working on defining my 1-year vision. What does success look like 1 year from now? What's your ideal average day? What kind of projects do you want to be on? What do you want to learn? What kind of impact do you want to make? Answering these questions can give you the personal insight you need to discover your next best step. So next, scan. Prepare yourself for the risk of making your next move by scanning for opportunities, learning, talking to others, and looking for examples of people who have been successful in the areas you're aiming for. What are you looking for in a promotion or role change? Salary, recognition, responsibility? And how can you work towards that before a promotion or alternative role is available? How can you learn, take action, tackle new projects, and solve problems? I'm exploring potential opportunities by actively involving myself with other teams in my organization to gain experience and insight into different parts of the business. Also, be sure to leverage others, be it mentors, peers, or friends. Who do you admire? Who's already doing the things you're interested in? Identify those folks you can network with and learn from. Personally, I needed to develop a stronger skill set around long-term business planning and strategy. So I'm connecting with folks in my org who are strong in this area, and I'm learning from them. Then pilot. Dip your toes in the water and test your new direction. Look for realistic and achievable next steps. What small experiments can you run in the short term? Maybe you can take an intro course to decide if you want to pursue higher education. Maybe do a job shadowing program or travel, work from a different office before deciding whether to move. And what larger projects can you look at within the next year? Maybe you do take that certification or pursue higher ed, or assert yourself to help other teams meet their goals. For example, I recently offered to help the events team at my organization host a conference to see if events marketing is something I'm interested in. And while I appreciated the experience, I realized it's not a path I'm currently interested in pursuing. However, in supporting that event, I met other leaders in the business who are now giving me the opportunity to gain experience on their teams. So my piloting continues. Once you've explored various opportunities and decided which you'd like to pursue, you can position yourself to launch. And you know you're willing to launch in the new direction if you're willing to do so, even if you fail. So when will you make your move? And what will help you take those final steps if you get stuck? As you continue to explore your next move, set your vision, explore opportunities, and take your next steps. As young professionals, we are responsible for pursuing our own career growth. But a good leader is positioned to support us in that effort. As you identify and define your career goals, it's helpful to be clear and direct with your leader. Share your ideas, receive feedback, ask your questions, and continually follow up. Thanks so much for the time.
Thanks, Ben. That was great. One thing you mentioned that really stuck out to me is how we are responsible for our own career, and that couldn't be more right. You couldn't be more right about that. I know me personally, I recently shared with my leaders that I wanted to pursue a certification that I knew would make me more attractive in my role. And through sharing that, I found out that the cost was covered 100% by my company, which I was so excited about that. I bet you can imagine. But if I hadn't have shared that, I would have never gotten that information. So does anyone have any questions for Ben, or have you had a similar experience to where, you know, you had a positive outcome from sharing something with your leaders, or it really worked out for you when you expressed your explicit interest to your leadership team? Feel free to share or drop something in the chat. We love to hear about it. Thank you for those awesome points, Ben.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Next up, we have Grayson Miller, who's going to talk to us about why it's important to brand yourself by networking internally.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Alex. So on the front of the slide, you'll see here, I think we've all probably heard the saying before, that your network is your net worth, and you can tell a lot about a person by who they surround themselves with. So we're going to take a dive into this but I think that internal networking is so important and can really contribute positively to your growth. So first, going to start bigger picture here, and kind of focus on three things that seem obvious: your company culture, your team, and then the role itself. But whether you're at your current role, or you're evaluating, you know, whether to stay there, or you're considering making a career change, I think it's important to look at each of these three and kind of weigh them. To take a dive deeper, so culture, that trickles down from the top, and by that I mean leadership. So for me, I wanted to be at a place where I was surrounding myself with go-getters and tenacious people, a place where it promoted individuality. I could be myself, but they also cared and invested in my success. And I'll come back to that last point of finding people that want to invest in your success. But that was kind of the reason I made a pivot 2.5 years ago. Culture was a big thing for me. Also, it's important to look at the team, you know, the team itself, who are the people you're working with that may have a culture of its own. What's the etiquette? What role do you play? What's your biggest opportunity for impact? And then the job itself, I think you can be a little selfish when evaluating this one. You know, I think we're all in a place where we're trying to have a career, not a job. And I think that's very important. And when you're considering having a career versus a job, you need to have a runway for growth. And so ask yourself, what's your opportunity for growth in this seat? What's the timeline? And does that align with your goals? So then kind of diving in here into internal networking, key themes. I think it's never too early to start building your internal brand. Early, often, you know, be bold, be proactive. Ask yourself, how do you want to be perceived? You know, are you thoughtful? Are you respectful of other people's times? Could your tone come across abrasive? Are you inclusive? You know, do you promote a spirit of collaboration, or, you know, are you more independent? There's not always a right answer, and sometimes it's a combination of both. Certainly don't need to overthink these things, but you do need to think them. I think self-awareness is huge, and being aware of your communication style as well as others that you work with is really important, and learning how to adapt to, you know, company culture and learning where you can add value. You know, present yourself as someone who wants to take initiative, who wants to be called on, and, you know, equally, if not more importantly, someone who's accountable to see something through. One of the greatest lessons that I learned early on was how much of an impression you can make by being proactive versus reactive. Ask questions, be quick to listen and slow to speak, right? Which is often hard to do. There's so much power in listening and absorbing as much information as you can. So make the time to ask people in your company higher up than you to get coffee, get more involved with the community. You know, there's that saying, you miss all the shots you don't take, or whatever it is, but just make the ask. And by doing so, hopefully, you know, you might find a mentor organically. Be yourself. I think authenticity is another big thing in any career, but also put your pride aside. Don't be too prideful to open your eyes and see what you can learn from other people that have been in your seat or even in your seat, whether they're superiors or colleagues. I think it's a best practice to keep your eyes and your ears open, because there's always something to be learned no matter which seat you're in. A lot of learning happens through osmosis, right? It happens live. When networking internally, I think particularly in a mentor-mentee setting or an engagement with someone you're directly reporting to or being evaluated by, just be in absorption mode. Absorb as much as you can. In any industry, you know, whatever your job is, whether you're in tech sales or whether you're a private wealth advisor or whether you're an attorney, there's always something that you're selling, and there's, typically a best way of doing it. So take pieces from people that you admire and that have done a good job that in your company, or, mentors that you think, wow, they're crushing it and I would love to get to where they are. Take tidbits of what they're doing great and then make it your own. So that's not to say don't be unique or lose your individuality confined to everybody else. But I think it's important to highlight this piece because there's so much discussion around, especially in year-end reviews and a lot of the stuff Ben just talked about, evaluating yourself against your peers. And that's just inevitable. There's always a bar set and you're always being evaluated against others. And I think you should absolutely bring up what you're doing well that others, that are higher than you, that are similar. But it's not as much talked about, to flaunt your differences is a competitive advantage. I think, a quick story of my personal career is I had to present a business plan which included a personal pitch in order to become a private wealth advisor. And I thought a lot about my personal pitch and which route to take that, and whether I should just really focus on traits that I possess that other successful advisors possess and hit on those, which I feel like, again, it is important to articulate because we are measured against our peers. However, I think it's important to, in my case, I pointed out that I feel that I have an ability to connect with others in a way that's authentic and different than other people's. And I think that sense of relatability will allow me to stand out and be different than other advisors. And I plan to use that as a competitive advantage. So, there's this book that I've read called The Greatest Salesman Alive. And whether you're in sales or whichever field you're in, I think it's still an inspiring read and something to take from it. But there was a quote in it that I just wanted to share with everyone in the context of being yourself. So in the book, he's promoting his uniqueness to the world. And he says, I will capitalize on this difference, for it is an asset to be promoted to the fullest. Vain attempts to imitate others no longer will I make. Instead, will I play my uniqueness on display in the marketplace. I will proclaim it. Yes, I will sell it. I will begin now to accent my differences and hide my similarities. So too will I apply this principle to the goods that I sell. Salesmen and goods, different from all the others, and proud of the difference. I'm a unique creature of the nature. I am rare and there is value in all rarity. Therefore, I am valuable. So everyone just remember that, always be yourself. Authenticity bodes well in any seat. And, not to get too personal, but we're all going to hit roadblocks. We're all going to have no's. I suggest letting those roadblocks and those no's motivate you to persevere and keep going instead of get you down. Take a good hard look at where you are and where you want to be, and ask yourself if you're surrounded with people who want to see you grow, who want to see you succeed, who want to see you seize your full potential. And if you're not, you might be at the wrong place and want to evaluate, a potential change. But find a mentor, find someone who cares and is invested in your success, and then do the same for somebody else. Looking back on how much I learned just by networking internally and externally with people who had traits, that were at places in their career that I wanted to be at, I realized now how impactful that was in getting to where I am now and where I still hope to go. Celebrating the victories, laughing at the losses, the big wins, the little wins, all of it. It's really nice to have someone to kind of go through that with. And then lastly, coming back to the point on paying it forward, you'll see a quote on here, Winston Churchill. I really love this quote. I'm also big on philanthropy, but I think it applies to internal networking as well, that we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. So I think it's not only important to find those people that are invested in you and your success, but really pay it forward and invest in someone else's success too, no matter how junior or senior you are. Don't be a taker. Things come full circle. Odds are that your mentor that you already have, or that your soon to be mentor that you may find, was probably mentored by somebody else, and they're paying it forward by mentoring you. So it's not only rewarding from both a mentor and a mentee standpoint on a professional and a personal side, I think, but also it's this internal networking cycle, I think, is beneficial and healthy to the growth of your organization. So with that, I will pass it off and feel free to reach out with any questions.
Thanks, Grayson. That was awesome. And it hit home with me. I'm really big on internal networking. I know that that's one of the best ways to, just let other people know what your skills are. And the more you network and the more people know who you are, you'll find yourself getting tapped for special projects and, just different things that can help you advance your career. One way to get connected internally is check to see if your company offers a different, an affinity group or a DE&I organization that you can join and just network with peers and different people in leadership. So that's always a good start. Thanks so much, Grayson. That was awesome. So feel free throughout these presentations to take a screenshot of the screen. We will also share this deck with you guys via email as a follow-up from the event. But as always, if you have questions or comments, just come on camera, wave your hand. We'll call on you or drop it in the chat and we will call out your question for you. So let's transition into something that I think is extremely critical when you are building your resume. That is communicating your wins in a measurable way, which is something that you have to do when you are putting together that resume. Caitlin, can you please talk to us about how important that is when thinking about making your next move?
Absolutely, Alex. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my brief talk today is focused on an important skill to learn early in your career, communicating your wins in a measurable way. I have had a lot of opportunities presented to me where I was able to discuss my successful projects and programs with a number of different audiences, including executives. And these are just some of the things that I did both naturally and some things I had to work on to better myself and my communication skills. These skills have helped me get executive buy-in for an extremely important initiative that has shifted the landscape of application security at my current employer, and it has provided upper management vital visibility into my work. The ability to communicate your achievements is not really discussed enough and is key in your upwards momentum from a career perspective. The first thing you should keep in mind is the success criteria for your project or goal. Once this is clearly laid out, you will be able to speak to it very easily with or without time to prepare for the conversation. One way you can do this is by using the SMART method. This stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. It's a great framework for laying out your goals and discussing your successes. If you just sit down and apply these adjectives to each of your projects, you will be able to speak to the high-level achievements that occurred because of the project. I would definitely do some research into this framework and learn how you can apply it inside and outside of the workplace. But just a quick example of using it while we're here. Let's imagine that I am working towards deploying an application. For specific, we could say our team deployed the application with these specific use cases, caring for these specific business needs. For measurable, you would want to note things like whether deadlines were met, if the business needs were accomplished, and if the application functioned properly through the quality assurance checks. For achievable, we would make sure that all of the goals we are setting for this application are possible to achieve, as well as knowing the proper resources that can achieve exactly what you need. The deadlines need to be reasonable, and there should be a solid understanding of potential roadblocks. Finally, timely would focus on whether you met your deadlines, as well as whether the application potentially saved employee time and effort, which would directly translate to company dollars saved. If you're able to speak to each of these topics, you should have a really good explanation on why the project or even the general task was a win. The next point I'd like to make is if you are unable to create quantitative or number-specific data around your project, you should absolutely come up with qualitative or subjective wins that came as a direct result of your work. An example of this is the program I created at my company. I was presented with a task that I wasn't really fully sure how to tackle, but as a part of it, I asked for volunteers for a program that focused on furthering their security training. My volunteer team really hit the ground running and started creating content that truly benefited the rest of their departments. While there was no real way to communicate that win in a number-based manner, I was able to speak to things like the culture change that having these volunteers brought about, how more projects were brought to my attention so I could be part of that conversation, and how security began to be more exciting for our teams instead of just another box to check off. Another topic that ties directly into your success criteria is having a focus on the scope of your projects. If you're fully aware of what you are trying to accomplish, as well as what areas of business will be affected, you will be able to talk about it with very little effort involved. Knowing your scope will also allow you to analyze priorities in an effective manner, which would ultimately lead to a more successful project. To bring the whole success criteria part of the conversation to an end, I would like to touch briefly on keeping track of the work you're doing. I have found that filling out status reports to my management has been a very effective tool, both for keeping them informed, but also being able to speak to all of my accomplishments over a year's time. I can pour through the status reports if I need to spark an idea of all of the things I had completed over that time frame. This can be very, very helpful, especially around the time for promotions or merit increases. Something that particularly helps me in these conversations is to prepare heavily for that conversation if you have the time to. I find that preparation helps you best identify what achievements you're trying to convey and whether you're doing so in a way that is appropriate for the intended audience. It's vital to understand who you're going to be communicating with and present the details that would be the most interesting or impactful to them. So for an example, if you're going to be speaking with a technical colleague, the usage of technical jargon could be beneficial and potentially build rapport. However, if you're speaking with an executive or a higher level director, technical or line of business jargon can cause a bit of a communication barrier that you want to avoid. By catering to the audience that you know you will be speaking to, you will inevitably have a more successful discussion. So I personally have a tendency to write out everything I'm going to say about a week or so prior, so I can have as much time as possible to go through and ensure that I'm communicating in the best way possible. Since nerves can present a bit of a challenge in these situations, especially for me, it can be very helpful to do that, as you are less likely to forget the vital points that you want to convey. So to segue to a different form of communication, as Alex brought up, there are ways to boost your resume using some of these tips. Instead of providing vague examples of what you did or are doing during your career, you can change passive verbs into more active ones. An example of this is, instead of mentioning that you led an application security program, you should provide specifics such as led an application security program where I held monthly meetings with 10 developers to create security specific content to provide to the remaining development teams. I also assessed vulnerabilities and provided solutions, etc. If you are keeping track of your tasks, as mentioned before, you can use that to give a thorough representation of your current position. It can also be a game changer if you cater your resume to the job you're applying to. Again, keeping in mind the audience so you can give them the most relevant information for the position. So if anybody has any questions or thoughts, definitely drop it in chat or unmute yourself, and I will hand it back off to Alex.
Thanks, Caitlin. Quantifying your experience is so critical. I know merit increases are always at the top of my mind. I always want to get the most out of my merit. So obviously I do the best job that I can on every task. And on top of that, I keep a portfolio. That way I'm always ready. If somebody asks me to see a work sample, or if I'm thinking about, applying for something, that way I'm not scrambling to remember what I did in January, right? I just open my portfolio and all my projects are there. And I may just have to tailor it, like you said, to that different audience, depending on what I may be applying for or what I'm trying to convey, but it's there. And it's just small tweaks instead of trying to put everything together at once.
So Robert mentioned in chat that a full focus planner is useful. And I just wanted to share that, yes, I am obsessed with planning. So I agree.
And that's a good reference too, right? Because you can go back in your planner and see what you wrote. You can check out your notes. You can see what your thought process is. Because if you've got, like me, I've got 60 projects going on at once, you may forget something that is easy for you to quantify on your resume, right? That really may be essential. So again, writing it down, having that planner, portfolio, point of reference, you really, really need that. Makes it so much easier. So lastly, Ryan is going to talk to us about something that everybody needs to have down packed, your elevator pitch. And at the end of his segment, we are going to open it up and see if anyone wants to give us their elevator pitch. Maybe you have one already that you use. Maybe after his segment, you come up with one and you want to try it out on us. This is the space for that, right? We are all here to work on these things together because we want to move up. So we're giving away prizes. Don't forget for your participation. And with that, just take notes as Ryan presents us with some best practices. Ryan?
All right, thank you. And just dovetailing a little bit, because a lot of what I'm going to go over is catering to your audience and how early in my career I might not have done that so greatly. So again, I'm Ryan. Today I'm going to go over a high-level step of how you can have an elevator pitch that you can tailor to your audience. And I'll talk about a true story of where I embarrassed myself a little bit. So to give you the background, I'm a year or two out of college, just got my first job at BlackRock. I'm in our Philly office, which wasn't as large as our headquarters in New York. I was traveling up to New York to be able to attend some meetings and to present a little bit. It was kind of stressful to get there, taking Amtrak and the subway system and not being familiar with New York. In Philly, it's kind of like the T, kind of similar to Atlanta, and it's much easier to figure it all out. So after a day of long meetings and presenting, I'm in the elevator, and sure enough, a senior managing director walks in, and I introduced myself, and they asked me what I did. And this senior managing director, manages about 3,000 people, so they're pretty high up. They're head of our SaaS program. So I introduced myself. I told them what I'm working on, and I went into a lot of the nitty-gritty details. And after I explained it, I could just tell from the look at their face that they didn't know what I was talking about. They had that like blank stare look, searching for something to say. So I knew right then that I needed to have an elevator pitch and to be able to tailor it to different audiences and maybe my goal of why I was communicating the pitch. So your senior audience, your audience can be a senior leader, can be a coworker, can be a new acquaintance, a job opportunity, a potential client. The purpose of an elevator pitch is to answer, what do you do or what can you do? So the high level template: introduce yourself, your name, your position, what you do, what you work on, what you want to do. Start high level, be concise yet broad. So if I was talking to the senior leader again, maybe I would say, how my work impacts the company, how it impacts our objectives or our OKRs. If I was talking to a potential client, I would want to say, my value proposition, what am I bringing to them? You should say, if it was a potential job opportunity, what do I bring to the table? And maybe like a quick track record of my success, kind of like what Caitlin was saying with being able to articulate some of the metrics about what you did. And end on a question. So if I was talking to a senior leader, I may say something like, what do you want to see out of us in the next 6 months or next, over the next year? If I was talking to a client, what else would you like to see out of our product? Where are some shortcomings in your current system? A potential job? Are there any job opportunities available that match my skill set? And remember, elevators aren't that long, so you got to keep it brief. So with that, I'll go over a quick example. Maybe if I ran into anyone here on the street and I wanted to, meet a new acquaintance, I would say something like, my name is Ryan Umstead. I'm a senior software engineer and team lead. I work on enabling BlackRock's 3,000 developers to use, build, test, release, and verify their software. Additionally, I create scalable and resilient systems to enable our operations team to provide 24/7 uptime of our SaaS product. I have over 6 years of experience in distributed systems, containers, microservices, cloud technologies, automation, and software development. What kind of technology do you work on a day-to-day basis or use? So with that, please drop your questions in the chat. I actually don't have access to the chat, so if anyone could relay any questions to me, that would be great. Otherwise, we're going to be taking volunteers to give your elevator pitch.
So this is actually a question for everyone, but how do you overcome imposter syndrome?
So I can start with that one. I found that towards the beginning of my career, I was having significant imposter syndrome. Like every day I was just in agony with it, basically. But one thing I did, and it kind of ties into Grayson's topic, was I got a mentor, because what I found with mentorship is it's kind of this safe space to talk about things that maybe you're not quite ready to talk about with your management yet. So a good example is, oh, I have this really great idea, but I'm not 100% sure that it's going to be super useful. And I'm not positive that I should move forward with it. And then if you have a mentor that's working kind of in the same space as you, even if it's just some, like for me, I had a mentor that was in tech while I was in cybersecurity, still relevant enough, still a bunch of ties there. I would bring it to her and I would just say, what are your thoughts on this? What do you think? And most of the time she would validate me. So at that point, my imposter syndrome started getting less and less, because I had all of these great ideas that I was bringing to her and she would validate me consistently. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I love that, Caitlin. And I think just to dovetail on that, like learning how to validate yourself. I think I struggle with that. I think a lot of people do, personally and professionally. And so it's awesome to find resources and mentors in your life who can validate you. And then with some practice, we can learn how to validate ourselves, and that can be pretty powerful as well. And then also just recognizing that no one has it completely figured out, and we're all doing the best that we can. So, you know, it just, yeah, I think just those two things. It's my 2 cents.
I'll comment on that as well. I mean, having imposter syndrome is a perfectly normal and relatable feeling. Again, echoing off of Ben and Caitlin, just being confident in yourself and speaking that on over yourself is very, very important. Because, you know, if you're given a task and you're doing a great job at it, for example, I know I have a marketing communications director at my job. However, my team has asked me to handle marketing communications just for our small little organization. So I can definitely relate to that, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this for my team, but there's a director who does this for everyone, right? She doesn't have the capacity to do it for our little team. So I'm being tapped on my shoulder to do that. And I don't feel like I can do this. Like, what if she sees my communications and she doesn't like it? Or, you know, what if I'm not as good as she is? She's a director. She's been doing it longer. But just know that if someone's asked you to do something, or if you've got hired to do a job, you can do that job. Someone has believed in you enough to hire you or to ask you to complete that task. And like Ben said, nothing's going to be 100% perfect. So one person doesn't know every single thing, and maybe the way that you go about doing things could be different, but that doesn't mean that it's any worse or any better than the way someone else does it. I think Grayson mentioned it. You have to be unique and kind of, you know, live in your own truth and just trust yourself. But you know what, Ryan? I know that you asked if someone wanted to give a shot at their elevator pitch. So I'll raise my hand, I'll give mine, and then I'll let you tell me what you think. So, hi, my name is Alex Blakely. I'm a marketing manager at Comcast. My talent is that I'm a collaborator and a bridge builder responsible for building and growing our customer community in partnership with a fast-paced sales team. How was that?
I think you hit on 2 of the 3 steps. The last one would just be to end on a question, but that was great overall.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so end on a question. I will work on that. I will edit my speech and I will ask that question, Ryan. thank you for that feedback. I really appreciate it. I will definitely incorporate that. So I'm not caught in an elevator without asking my question. So does anyone else on the call want to maybe share their elevator pitch?
Don't be shy, guys. Now's the place to do it. And there's
I'll give it a
practice.
shot.
Awesome.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Robert Daniel. You can call me Red. That's my initials. I am a advisor, mentor, and investor in startup companies. My goal is to help companies and people operate at their best in terms of their teams and operational excellence, do go-to-market strategies, customer discovery, and also help find financing for these startups. Do you or someone you know have a startup idea that they're trying to get off the ground?
Awesome.
That's fantastic.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to give it a shot? We've got more than one prize.
I know that Tanya said in chat that she will do it if she can use what she wrote down just now. And yes,
You can, of course.
you absolutely can. So please unmute and give us your best elevator speech. Or
Here I go. I'm definitely using my cheat sheet. So hello, everyone. My name is Tanya Guinyard. I'm an onboarding coordinator working with our global learning and development team here at the Coca-Cola Company. So I love being able to facilitate not only our new hire orientation for all of our salary hires in North America and such a large organization, but I'm also familiar with the federal regulations to complete I-9 verifications to show proof of identity and eligibility to work in the US. So far, I've led over 40 sessions and onboarded over 400 employees. And I love the opportunity to welcome people into the Coca-Cola family as well. Have you already had the opportunity to get onboarded with us? And that's my question I threw in there. But it was definitely fun and great tips, and thank you.
that was great. I could feel that you really enjoy what you do, which I think is really, really important. So thank you for sharing. That was awesome.
Yeah, I was going to compliment that both Robert and Tanya had a soothing, confident tone, and it's not always what you say, it's how you say it, and it allowed us to stay engaged and want to keep listening, at least for me. So really good job.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Does anybody else want to give it a try?
So while we're waiting on some folks to volunteer, Ryan, how long did it take you to perfect your elevator pitch? I'm assuming you didn't get it on the first go.
I think he may be frozen.
Uh-oh. Maybe he did get it on his first go.
Maybe he did. I think he may be frozen, but the one I have, Jessica, I can say I have changed it at least a million times. I've changed it at least a million times. And as you can see, I still didn't have it down pat, but it's an ever-changing thing, right? As you do more things, as your job changes, as your role changes, as your responsibilities increase, you're going to want to bring up different things that you do. So I think an elevator pitch is going to be something you're always going to be making edits to, like throughout your entire career. So
Also had a question for Ben and a question for Grayson, so I'll just cut in here. Ben, my question for you, which step in the pivot methodology is the most exciting to you? And then which step is the most challenging to you?
Okay, so the most exciting, I think, I'm a little bit torn. I think like piloting, testing my new direction. Scanning is really fun. Scanning, I think, is the most fun because you're looking around, looking at the horizon, sky's the limit, any opportunities that you want to pursue. And then it's super exciting to dive in and test out that direction and see if it feels good, see what it's like. I think that's the most exciting. The most challenging, I think, is to, ultimately launch, because that involves, risk and fear and anxiety and, maybe not as much security as you're used to and just staying where you are. So I think launching is the most challenging because it's anxiety producing and it's just new and out of the comfort zone. But I think that's really a good thing. And just creates really good experience, and the more you do it, the better you get, the more confident you become. So, yeah.
Awesome answer. Thank you. And then my question for Grayson, can you walk us through your most beneficial mentorship? And then how did you network to get that mentorship?
Ooh, wow, that's a loaded one. Well, I'm thinking of kind of my first career before my first job before my career. Had a great mentor there. Honestly, sometimes mentors evolve from challenges. I find is often the push we need to really go to somebody. And I had a gentleman at my prior job who I went to for advice, and I could just feel how thoughtful he was in responding, and even checking back in and seeing how I felt or the situation evolved. And if you can sense that from someone, that they're invested in your success and that they care, hold on to that. Set quarterly check-ins, set a coffee or a drink once a month. That's kind of how mine evolved, was from kind of adversity. And then he really helped encourage me, while he didn't want me to leave our same company, to kind of spread my wings and do something that was better for my skill set and growth. And so I think that is, I don't know if that answers the question, but and then where I currently am, I have a variety of different mentors that I kind of go to for different things, and I'm a mentor for other people as well. So I do think it comes full cycle, like I said.
That is awesome. Thank you. And then it looks like Michelle dropped a question in chat. I think this is more for everybody, or maybe it's for you, Grayson, based on what you were just talking about. Do you think lateral job moves are good and move your career forward?
Yes, I think that you can switch fields completely and follow your passion, and that can absolutely be the right route. I think that if you do want to stay in the same field and you're not getting, you feel like you've hit a plateau where you currently are and you want to do more. For me, I wanted to do more, and you can only ask to do more so much. If there's not a certain opportunity, or then it might be time to move. Point is, I think that your experience and your skill set translates over if you switch laterally, and you're able to kind of build and snowball upon that. And I think it's from a competitive and an economical standpoint, I think there's a lot of benefits to that. But if you're going to stay lateral, make sure it's for the right reasons, that you are passionate and like that industry.
I'll piggyback off of that, Grayson. I know I've made a lateral move in my career. I went from being a sales rep to a marketing specialist. And with that, I had to lose my commission. So I was actually making less than what I was making as a sales rep. But I knew I wanted to get into marketing. Before I moved over, like Grayson mentioned, I was working with a mentor. She was a marketing director. So she was coaching me, she was leading me, she was guiding me. And when I got the job, I was promoted within a year. So I had already, I invested my time into being mentored. I took that step back in pay to get where I wanted to be. And then within the next year, I was making more than I was making 2 years prior. So it can work out. You just have to have a plan. And definitely, like Grayson said, if it's lateral, make sure that, it's something that you're really going to be focused on and that you want to do.
Congrats. I love that. I think that also goes back to the three things I mentioned, the culture, the team, and the job. Notice none of those mentioned pay, but if you evaluate and weight those properly, it sounds like you took a pay cut and it ultimately was rewarding because you chose culture and runway for growth over that. So I love that. I'd love to ask the audience if anyone wants to share or open up on why they joined this, meeting today, and what they hoped, just why you joined and if you got anything out of it.
Great question.
Or you could do another elevator pitch. I thought that was an easier one.
And I see in the chat that I took a huge risk declining a full-time job for an internship with Coca-Cola. Greatest decision ever because here I am. Coca-Cola aligned more with my career goals. That's awesome. That is awesome. And I see Kate says she's joined today because she switched careers into the tech industry and wanted to meet others in the field. Someone else said they wanted to be able to hear a bunch of different perspectives on how to succeed. You definitely got that today. Eunice said, I'm preparing myself for my next move. I've hit a plateau and I want to do more. And a career pivot, some great points for today. Robert, thanks for that comment. And you know what, just for joining this call today, I can already tell that if you joined, you're participating, you know, you wanted to hear the nuggets that we're going to be giving out today. You're already on that right path to advancing yourself in your career, because this is what you have to do. You have to network. You have to listen to the other perspectives. You have to, you know, get that advice, even if it's something that you've heard a million times, just making sure that you soak every single thing in and just apply it. You're already on your way.
One of the things that I found interesting, and I've been working on my pitch for a little bit, so maybe that's cheating. But I've got what I'm doing today versus what I'm doing tomorrow. I know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, and I'm not going to take the time to explain to you what I'm doing today. We can get to that after the elevator pitch if you want to hear more about that. But I want to grab the attention and say, this is what I'm going to be doing, because why focus on what I used to do? I want to focus and then push forward with what I'm going to be doing. So you only have what, 40 characters, 15 seconds to grab somebody's attention. So start off with what you want to talk about.
Exactly. Exactly. Your elevator pitch should definitely be exactly what you want to talk about, because I know personally, I do a lot of creative in my personal life. So when I'm pitching myself, it's not always about what I do in my paid role. It's about where I want to go, what my overall goal of a job is, and pulling out my different talents from everything I do, not just what I do at Comcast, and making that my elevator pitch.
Yeah, Robert, I love what you said about, it kind of reminded me, I might be butchering the saying, but giving people the headline. And then if they ask for the full article, then you give them the full article, but it can be hard to not start, you know, diving in too deep, and you can tell when you're losing them. But I definitely want to hear the full article of what you do, maybe offline or networking. So you sold me on the headline.